Yes, welcome back from the break. Yeah, Martin, I was just starting to chat to you about your reflection, having listened to the three of us talking about Lekgotla. And we are talking about it from the South African perspective, but I know you have been exposed to the entire Southern Africa. But yeah, maybe introduce yourself, take us through your journey and your encounter with Lekgotla, Martin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Welcome to the listeners. I'm Martijn de Liefde. Yes, LEKGOTLA, it started a long time ago. I just realized it's 20 years this year. 2023 is 20 years ago that I started the Gotla company. But before that, actually in 1997, my parents moved to Johannesburg. And on the aeroplane from the KLM, there was a magazine, and the professor Lovemore Mbeki wrote about the concept of Ubuntu.
Mm.
And years later, my parents decided to retire in Johannesburg, and they asked an architect, Lemmy Gamma, to design the house and the extension of the house in Dainfern. And when he came back with his design, there was a gotla in the garden, in the middle of Dainfern. So we loved it, and we put a lot of fire there. But the neighbors, the Western neighbors, were very angry because of the smoke. And this is how the journey really truly started. And my parents received a lot of complaints because of the smoke of the fire. And we have started inviting the neighbors, and my parents, of course, were invited also to Gaborone, to the family, or the Gamma family. And we met also Maki Mandela, which is the eldest daughter of Nelson Mandela, who was advisory board member at my father's company. And basically, that's where the journey started, exploring this dialogue concept. And I remember very well when Lemmy Gamma explained about this Botswana concept. He said, yes, we can listen to 2 million people, maybe even in 6 months, through the Paramount Chiefs and the House of Chiefs and the Khosis. And I was so fascinated because I immediately translated that to the corporate world, where when a company buys another company and they have to engage with the new employees they have bought because of the merger, it takes years and years and years to try to learn, because the CEOs basically never listen, because they are the ones who know best, and this is sometimes a very complicated structure. And when I heard about the Gotla, I thought, wow, this can be a very effective tool. And I think the Botswana way of dialogue is maybe the eldest democracy in the world.
Mm.
So this is a bit how it started. And yeah, we started actually with organizing dialogue weeks with CEOs from Europe, from the Netherlands in the beginning. And we brought them for a week to Johannesburg and later also to Gaborone. And then we ended for a 2-day session in the Madikwe Game Reserve, where Dutch leaders had to present to an African panel of CEOs and leaders and Khosis what they have learned from Africa. And I can tell you, as a Westerner, when you ask a Dutch person that we can learn something from Africa, that is very difficult to understand.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they immediately think then of, I don't know, Soweto, or I don't know, all kinds of problems that is on the African continent. But actually there is a lot to learn, and we have forgotten this concept of LEKGOTLA, I think, in the Netherlands. And I think that's very fascinating from the process, where And I think that's where I resonated a lot in the previous hour, where Sylvia was explaining about the hidden skill of the leader. Because I think this listening and the way the chiefs listen. I've been to the Gotla in Sochong, and I met Josie Gabaron, Puso Gabaron, and also the female chief. What's her name? Mossadi. In Ramotswa. And it's fascinating to see how these chiefs are listening, and especially when you expose Dutch people or American leaders to that way of listening. For them, they are very impatient.
Yes.
And they don't understand, why is this chief not saying anything? He must say, what is this? This guy is here and is only listening, and the chief must tell the vision. and and I think that is where my journey started. I call myself sometimes the jester, because a jester can actually say the truth to the king, but also to the people, and in a funny way sometimes. But as a facilitator, you can guide that process in for people that have never been exposed to this kind of leadership. So I think that's where the company started. In 2001, we did it with the Shell, the oil rigs, and in the Netherlands, some leaders, and also we started with the Dutch railway company, which was funny because I didn't know the effect of the Gotla in 23 years ago, if you do it wrong. Because if you apply it wrong as a leader, then you could abuse the system. You can show that you listen, but at the end of the Gotla, the chief takes the decisions. And if you then take decisions that haven't been discussed or dialogued about, you create mutiny. And so actually applying the Gotla in a Western way is also a skill, and it takes time. And also you need leaders that are true leaders.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I learned from you this hour before, is that you said, I don't know how they learned it, maybe from being exposed so much to it, but that listening in and the reflection on the dilemmas that people share, I think is fascinating in the LEKGOTLA process.
And then, Martin, when you decided to start Gotla Consulting, was LEKGOTLA the only methodology you were using?
No, that's quite. Now I think it's a merger of some things that my father and also my mother especially used. My father was a CEO of a medical equipment company, and he's dyslexic, and he used a lot of art. And my mother exposed our family, me, my brother, my father, to art exhibitions, but also artists. And art is something that we merged into the LEKGOTLA process, because we learned that art tells 1,000 words. Arts are used for metaphors, and also it's used for a common language. Like an image, everybody can understand an image, and most images are for worldwide, has similar connotations. So we always used an artist, a German artist, Klaus Elle, but also we use artwork which we call the universal life cycle from a Dutch artist, Jan Montaigne. And we introduced that in the LEKGOTLA process to engage people, to engage senior leaders, to share their thoughts about the artwork and also about the metaphors they draw themselves during the process, to come up with the right questions. Because I think the LEKGOTLA, another skill of the leader, is asking the right open questions. And art can be very useful as a metaphor for explaining what you want your people to come back with ideas based on the vision or the dream of the chief. So we use art as one of the tools. And I think the LEKGOTLA process is used for the decision-making process in the large-scale interventions we do. I think over the last 20 years in Europe, I think it's now over 80,000 people that have been host companies. And also in South Africa, we worked with the South African Railways, with Rio Tinto in the copper mine in Kruger Park, and also in Debswana in Botswana, the diamond mine. We did over 5,000 employees. We applied the Gotla in the corporate world. So I think we use art, we use metaphors, we use different kind of natural elements, also fire rituals. We merge that into the process to make it more dynamic, because you were saying sometimes in the LEKGOTLA it can be very lengthy. In Botswana, the people talk a lot, which is the way it should be. But this is something that in the West the people have no patience for. And that is, I think, where the problem lies, because many of the feedback we get when we do a Gotla process in Europe is they say, it takes a whole day from 9 to 5. I said, but you sit the whole day behind your desk, so why not one day you sit under the tree? And the process of dialogue and art and nature is useful to basically every half hour we merge from a more rational thinking to a more creative thinking. And in Botswana, I met a man called Samson Setumo, who is at that time, 20 years ago, he had a theater playback company where his theater group on the spot did a playback theater of what employees were saying. So he visualized that very instantly in 30 seconds, 1 or 2 minutes, what the people were saying. So if it was a very important message that you want to emphasize, either the artist made a quick sketch or a quick metaphor, or the art group came on stage to replay what the employee was saying.
Yeah, that's good.
So we mix with that in the process. Yeah. But what is fascinating from the African way, where I think the world can learn from, is the concept of listening, the concept of decision making, and the concept of that the leader is not this person on a pedestal who puts his PowerPoint on a screen and says, "This is my vision, follow it or you are fired." And, and unfortunately, although they don't want it that way, it happens all the time, because when you present your vision and then you ask, do you have questions? That is 180 degrees of what happens in the LEKGOTLA, where the chief asks the questions and the people answer. And that is what I took from what I've learned in Botswana, from the LEKGOTLAs, and also from the Ubuntu the Ubuntu philosophy in South Africa, and the process of forgiveness, which Bishop Tutu spoke a lot about, and Nelson Mandela. How can you take that forward so that you first aware of the issues in the organization or in the country? Most of the time, there needs to be a reconciliation, and before that, you need forgiveness to move on. And this process of forgiveness and reconciliation in a country or in a company is a very difficult process to manage. We all know the Truth Commissions in South Africa, but also in Rwanda, where they took it a step forward in the reconciliation process. And I'm not saying that those severe issues happened in the Netherlands, but in a similar way, in the corporate world, a lot of reconciliation is needed sometimes when companies merge or companies are bought by some other company, and a new culture is thrown into a company without dialogue.
The examples that you've shared with us of the companies that you introduced to LEKGOTLA, what were the type of challenges that they were addressing through the LEKGOTLA?
What I always say with my clients, and that's why I don't want to name all the detailed problems of the clients, but it has always to do with some issue that touches the company very hard. Either it's a strike or it is a layoffs of many thousands of people. We had a Dutch bank where there need to be 6,000 people laid off. So you can imagine the fear in a bank where the people were always exposed to wealth and everything was growing and everything is fantastic. So it's always with a major issue that it affects the identity of the company, it affects the purpose of the jobs of the people, and it affects the community, like in a merger. So it's merger acquisitions, layoffs, financial problems, sometimes introducing new products in the market. We had many American companies that were introducing new products in another culture. And like for Rabobank once introduced their bank in Spain, and the bank Rabobank in Spanish means shit bank. So they were surprised that nobody came to the bank. This could have been solved very quickly but that's just a side story. So it has always to do with if you put it in a very high level way, it is always has to do with the survival of the company, survival of the identity of the company, or the purpose of the products and services they want to sell.
And you say that it touches on many people. It's normally for big groups.
Yeah. Now, and that's interesting that you mentioned this, is that in the Western companies, normally they if there is a major issue, they hire big consulting firms. All the big ones, the big five, McKinsey and so on, and they interview the top level of the organization, and they go to the board of directors, they go to the management levels, and that's it. And then they say, we know now how to change it. And most of the time, the workforce has engaged in some user groups, but then if you have a company of 50,000 people, they maybe had 10 user groups with 20 people. So, and the fun part, I think, is that what we did is in the LEKGOTLA process, we facilitated, we do a maximum of 400 people in the room per day. And so let's say with the diamond mine, it were 5,000 people invited, and we had 10 days of listening, and then the chiefs take the decisions. So everybody is invited, and the middle management is invited as employee, not as a leader, because and that causes a lot of stress normally when you announce that, because the directors are happy with that, but the managers say, but we are the ones that should communicate with the people. And we say, no, we do that the other way around. So we first ask the CEO to share the dream, and then ask the people, how can we realize this dream? What do we need to change in the company? And that's where the people open up. And at the end of the listening process, then we have separate management sessions and change management interventions with middle management to discuss the decisions that have been taken by the board. But we do that afterwards. And that's maybe an innovation from the ancient Gotla process I learned in Botswana, which we altered a little bit to adapt to a corporate environment.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What does one need to do to make it adaptable to the corporate environment? Is the understanding of the origin of Lekgotla and East cultural perspective necessary, or is this what you as a consultant need to know, not the participants in the Lekgotla?
Yeah, normally when I'm invited, then the board, the CEO is really into it. He wants to know everything about it. Sometimes I take him one-on-one to Botswana for a couple of days to feel how it works. But we don't share it. In the beginning, I did because I was so excited, and I said, "Yes, Africa is the best, and it should be this way." But then the Dutch people came in with African skirts and make fun of it, and brought drums and said, "Oh yeah, what can we learn from Africa?" So we decided not so much to tell that immediately to the people, but let them experience it, and afterwards say, guys, what you have been through was actually a sort of Lekgotla, which I learned from Botswana. So that they first experience it, and then we tell them it's an African concept. But with the board of directors, I tell it up front, of course. They must know what they go through, because the CEO needs to take quite a vulnerable position to do this Gotla process. This vulnerability, is part of it, that he knows he gets into this, because that will give him the trust that he needs, and that he receives from the people to make the decisions. So yes, we talk about it with the directors and the managers, but not with the people. With the people, we just go into the process. Yeah. And afterwards, once the process is done, then some companies actually tried, because you said also about the U-shaped conference rooms, Sylvia.
Yes.
And that's quite of a big problem in Europe, that a lot of locations and rooms that I need to rent to do this don't have the shape that I want to create this half circle Lekgotla style, and also the breakout circles, because during a day we change the room setting 5 times, even with 400 people. So the setup is important. And with KLM, for example, Dutch Airways, we built a Lekgotla at the Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. So we built a modern sort of meeting setting for around 50 people, not so big, for one of the departments. Yeah. So and the people embraced that as the dialogue village square, because Lekgotla is a place. It's not only the process.
Yes.
So yeah, I think fascinating process, and also fascinating that you want to take this forward, which I'm quite excited about. Yeah.
Yeah. Martijn, if I may ask a question there, when you mentioned that you do take something like 400 people in a room at a time, so how many facilitators, for instance, will you have doing the process?
Yeah, good question. What we do, basically, we come with a very small team of our own facilitators, and we train employees of the client to become the indunas, as we call them, the creators of the small dialogue process. So when you have 5,000 people, we do 15 to 18 groups per day. So we need between 30 and 36 facilitators, because each group we put 2 creators or 2 indunas. One is asking the questions, and one is writing and sort of observing the group.
Okay.
Because in the West, not many people understand that only one person talks with the talking stick.
Yeah. Okay.
They all talk. So
Yeah.
you need two people to shut them up and say, hey, one person listens first, then the next one. And we do that sometimes quite childish. So one and then next and next and next. Otherwise, it becomes a mess because we are simply not used to this.
Yeah.
We are, especially in Holland, we are trained in discussion. And as you all know, then discussions, you have winners and losers. And in a dialogue, everybody wins because you create the common ground for the decision.
I assume, Martin, that is gone through the process and is transformed and is conscious of this principle is somebody that doesn't every day tell people that I'm using Lekgotla way to manage and lead you. So there must be a Lekgotla way. How does somebody who has been transformed through a process like this walk like, talk like, and engage like, in your view?
After the process, you mean?
Yeah, or even after the journey.
No, I still have. Actually, it was funny. Last month, I wrote on LinkedIn that the Gotla company is 20 years old, and then I get a lot of people answering me personal questions for text messages like, "Oh wow, in 2014, I can remember we did this dialogue and we were so engaged, and since the Corona, it is all broken down and we lost it because we all sit at home." So actually, people are very much engaged. They learn to create more connections to other departments because we mix the departments also in the dialogue process. So I think the employees are quite excited. So they really feel, wow, this chief is really want to listen to my opinion. I'm of value to join to give my opinion. And in a lot of companies, it's the opposite, where there's a lot of fear and people are not willing or scared even sometimes to share what they really mean or what their viewpoint is. And in the Gotla process, they are amazed that they are so close to the board of directors, which sometimes are very far away. Yeah.
So we could say that there will be the Lekgotla way of being once the organization has learned from it.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, there's in Holland there are a lot of consultants now that are doing the same thing. They call it fire meetings or other kinds of dialogue meetings, and they sit in circles, really a full circle. And that's not a Lekgotla to me because it actually you talk in circles. And that's not allowed in the Gotla. So for me, it was always difficult and still is that, yes, we need a train the trainer sort of concept to guide the indunas or the creators who facilitate smaller groups. But it should also be very authentic, and that means sometimes a bit amateuristic. Because an employee that is a finance department guy or a marketing manager or a secretary in the HR department is not a professional facilitator. And he will never be. So we'll give them some skills, and we do normally a 3 or 4 day training, but we really want to do it with employees, because then other employees that sit in that small circle, they feel more safe to share the truth, because it's not to a consultant that was hired by the CEO, but it's actually to a fellow employee. And then our team is facilitating, is doing all the, we have very high-tech system of, it's not high-tech nowadays, it's all internet-based, but everybody writes down in laptops what has been said, so we can easily group all the different viewpoints in a reporting structure. And also, of course, we have the technical team and the catering team. That is what we do. But the creators are not professional facilitators. We do that as a team. So with the three of us, Sylvia, with you, we could facilitate it, and then the company will organize and make different employees available for a lot more days. So if you do 10-day dialogue, then those employees basically need to be freed up from their normal job for more than 10 days. And that's of course also expensive sometimes for the company. That's why they say, no, we can't do that, because then the whole our product is not managed. But we have, like with KLM, you can't take all the stewardesses out of the system for 10 days because the planes will not fly. So, or I did it with health companies sometimes. But we still manage to find some employees, especially with the larger companies. It's easy to free up 40 to 50 people from the company to facilitate with us the process.
Yeah. And I think, Martin, from what Coach Lima mentioned earlier on, that the concept of equality. I mean, even when you identify these employees that will be trained to become trained for the trainer purpose, or to become the indunas at the time, it also help that you don't only identify the managers or the people at the higher level, because then that's another way of impressing the Lekgotla way, that even a person at the lower level, in a department, can be facilitating a session with manager or the CEO is sitting in that team as well.
Correct. So we never want managers, directors, or board members as indunas.
Yes.
So they become the employees who must listen or share ideas, and the indunas guide the smaller dialogues. And that's why we start with 400 people on a day. In that session, the CEO shares his vision, but it's more as a dream, very short. Then the indunas will talk in small groups in the same room about this dream. And I ask with our facilitation team, what do you think about this dream? What needs to be changed? What needs to be improved? What needs to be kept? And what is not working? And then we share that very quickly, and we have technology to show that on the screens quickly to the CEO. So he gets instant feedback in the morning before 10 o'clock about his own dream. So that's a 360-degree feedback to the CEO, which is in any of my clients has never been done before. And people are like, this is amazing. You can say really the truth to this guy, and he's still sitting there as a chief listening. That's quite a big job, I have to say, because in the beginning, a lot of CEOs are immediately reacting, and sir, you are not allowed. The room is laughing. But you can only take decisions and ask questions. So if you are not clear about what has been said, then you can ask a question. And then we send them away, and we use the artwork for that. So we group the 400 people in 18 or 15 smaller groups, and they go out for a working lunch in separate rooms, and they will get questions about the identity of the company, the meaning or purpose of the products and services, and community issues, how to become a stronger community. And those 18 groups, we have 6 groups with identity questions, 6 groups with meaning questions, and 6 groups with community questions to reflect on for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And then they have to paint. We let them paint a metaphor which summarizes their 2-hour life. And then they come back in the room and share so we have 18 presentations, and that's quite a lengthy process. And we use then theater groups in between to re-energize the room, but also to emphasize important messages from each group. And then it's the end of the day where we change the whole room setting in a Lekgotla only at the end of the day. And in the Lekgotla space, then the chief still asks questions, clarifying questions. and then takes operational decisions, and that he does every day. And at the end of the 5 or 10 day LEKGOTLA, he announces the strategic long-term decisions and the tactical approaches he wants to address. And he summons the managers to say, execute these decisions, please. So all 5,000 people, we do that also through a video link, will hear all the decisions. And that's quite...
Do you have somebody shadowing the CEO as he process whatever steps he's going to be taking, or as he process the input coming, or is left alone to?
No, that's actually what I learned from the Gosis and the paramount chiefs in Botswana. You have a very strong concept of council of elders. We mentioned it in the first hour that the elders are very important because they have been through processes many times, so they can protect the chief from basically reinventing the wheel. And so the Council of Elders is announced at the end of the day, of each day. The Council of Elders can be a group of people. And I always ask to the room, who works 10 years for this company? Who works 30 years for this company? And the one who has worked longest is always allowed to join the Council of Elders, even if she is or he is a regular rank and file employee, no matter which rank he is on, which is also fascinating. And of course, the secretaries are joining also that reflection moment before the decisions are taken. So the elders, some CEOs, some board members will join a separate room to reflect on the day, and then come back in the room and announce the decision. So it's not a sort of a dictator that announces the decisions. No. It's like what do you call that? A digosi, right?
Yeah. So I think in some of the questions or the points I listed in terms of taking it forward and make it relevant to the changing world we live in. It
Yes.
sounds like the design methodology that is important here if you are going to use LEKGOTLA, and also adaptability to situations.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, like I said, like with an airline, you can't put everybody in the same room because then the airline is not flying. Or in a hospital, the same thing. And you can't say to your patient, sorry, now I have a LEKGOTLA, you will die. So yes, it's difficult to get everybody in the room. I don't believe that a digital GOTLA has the same energy as that you are physically with the system in the room. But of course, people can listen in, like now we have listeners in this radio conversation. But yeah, they cannot share, they cannot react on what we are talking about. And when there are systems nowadays, especially after Corona, quite advanced, but still the power of being in the room and doing it for a couple of days is quite special, and generates also more knowledge. Actually, it reminds me of the LEKGOTLA in the Kruger Park, because there we had a CFO, a financial director, and her father was a paramount chief. And she was so against it. She said, "Oh my God, this is not gonna work in a corporate environment." And she wanted to refuse to pay my bills, and and she said, "No, I'm not gonna spend money on this lengthy Ubuntu talk. I don't want it." And I said, "Wait. It's trust the process." And the CEO trusted the process, and we went on with it. And what happened was, the first day, we had 400 people. They went home very excited, and they talked to the elders in the village. And they got excited. So the next day, they did preparation Gotla in the village, and then the employees went to the corporate Legotla in the conference room. So each day, these 10 days, the Gotla progressed. The information level was so dense and so high that a lot of decisions, I think we took over 70 decisions because so much information was gathered in such a short period of time. And people understood that this was the moment that they could share their knowledge and that it was truly listened to, which for me was amazing.
Martin, they will ask you what model of facilitation you're going to use.
Mhm.
And then if you mention it, and they will want evidence that has been well researched.
Mhm.
So have you come across such challenges?
All the time, because in the beginning my father's book was called African Tribal Leadership, and the people were questioning the word tribal a lot. They said, "Oh my God, they look at Africa, the tribes and the fights and the this and the that," and I said, "No, this is not it. This has been caused by other things. The true dialogue is a process that you must trust. You have to trust it, and it's not researched. Let's in that way that we did in endless ways in the West, but it has been there for I don't know. You know better than me. Many years, and this intuition combined with information, rational thinking with more intuitive thinking is unique if you put that together, but you need a CEO that trusts the process. I have never been in Europe introduced through human resources. Never. Always via the board of directors. Because the human resources they said, yeah, but that's amazing. You do 5,000 people, but yeah, then we can't do all these interventions that they have designed. So we're almost a competitor because it goes faster. And now I think you see a change also at human resources that they say, okay, we see the power of it. There is more dialogue trainers in the Netherlands as well that have shown and tested it in smaller groups. But it still remains difficult to sell it in a way because it requires quite a lot of guts from a CEO to say, yes, I'm going to listen to my 5,000 employees. But it's faster. If you see mergers, that sometimes it takes 5-6 years to merge two companies, and the culture is still not merged. Where I believe with the Gotla, you don't need to invite all, but if you have, I don't know, 20,000 people and you go with 3,000-4,000 people in dialogue, you pretty much understand what is the culture. And difficult to embrace for CEOs, but the ones that trust it are true leaders and have this skill that you talked about in the earlier hour, this hidden skill of listening in, of silence, of reflection that is needed to take decisions based on a common ground.
My colleagues to reflect on your inputs, but before that, my view is about actually Lekgotla model of facilitation, but more so about the lessons from Lekgotla and the principles and their application in combination with many others. I think that for me, if that can be achieved, I think we will broaden our capabilities to assist organizations to deal with very difficult situations. That's my take.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Absolutely. It's not the holy grail. It's only a tool to engage a lot of people, but you still need change management tools. You still need other kind of dialogue interventions and even sometimes discussion. Yeah, not always a dialogue. You also need discussion.
what is lingering in my head, Martin, is, as indicated in terms of a bigger group and probably for a big change in the organization, as you said, the one that will be affecting the identity of the organization. Can the concept, or have you ever tried to implement it in such a way that an organization want to use it for the kind of normal or regional teams? When I say normal or regional teams, I'm talking about a homogeneous group where you are having a specific department, maybe just the finance department or any other marketing or whatever engineering department, only a homogeneous group that can use the concept, like maybe for the monthly meetings or in whichever way. Have you ever tried that, or do you think that will actually be able to be implemented in this way?
No, that we have done that also. Absolutely, we had GOTLAs with 7 people. Was just one department. It's only what I've learned is if you mostly every department has some kind of influence on the other department, even if they don't like to hear that, but and they work in silos. So I believe to combine the departments that have interaction, the GOTLA becomes more rich and more informed, and therefore the decisions are more effective. But you can do it in a team. If there are like personal issues in a team, it works very well. I've done it with a country, with one country from a very big corporation, and actually in the end it was quite a big decision. They closed down that whole country. So that can also happen. But yes, you can do it with any homogeneous group, but it's less rich.
Yeah. Well, it's better on a much bigger scale and different.
No, it doesn't have to be all. What works also very effective is that you take the department and you take 2 or 3 people from every other department as informants to share knowledge. Oh, sorry, within the dialogue.
Yeah.
One of the things very fascinating I saw the outcome of the proposal is that people considering that the old time are long.
Yes.
That's monitor like to go with reflected the old answer. And,
Yes.
and all of them were so occupied because they were communicating different messages that indicate that they are dealing with the old way of doing things. And that they have conflict in the future.
Yes. Yeah, but what happens a lot in the GOTLA is when the decisions are taken, the energy is sometimes very low, not because they're not excited, but because they think, oh my God, there's still so much work to do. And then we end the GOTLA with a ritual burning the stuff they have said we should stop doing.
Well, it's good.
and then it's almost like a affirmation. So we are not going to do backstabbing. We are not going to do bureaucratic things anymore. And if then, like you said, 3-4 months later, they're doing it again because it's very difficult to off-learn, then you do a mini GOTLA with that department. Say, hey guys, and then you can do an after GOTLA with that single department where a lot of things are still happening. And sometimes then it's a leadership problem in that specific department that hasn't been resolved in the big GOTLA.
Wow. Thank you so much. You miss Southern Africa.
Yes, you did actually. And I'm coming soon back. It's to now the Corona is over. It's 3 years that we haven't been, and it's time to reconnect.
Wonderful. We look forward to this back.
Yes.
Yeah, we met. You and I we met time ago, and
It's almost 10 years.
yeah, but I'm glad that we're gonna do this monthly conversation. So your colleagues at Khotla are welcome. It's not like there is a certain particular milestone we want to achieve. We just feel that this is a natural gift from our forefathers and foremothers that we have ignored. And we feel that it will enrich us in many other things that we do. We are not trying to be culturally biased. There are many other models in Africa and all over the world. But we feel that there's just so many principles in the Lekgotla that we come across in other principles that I'm a fan of the World Cafe, and actually I was supposed to attend one this morning. I couldn't because it was at 5:00. And yet those conversations around fire is Lekgotla.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we are just adding to what is there.
That's true, and it has a lot of value. And I would love to tour around Johannesburg, but also Botswana again, to re-feel the ancient ones, like in the Sochong or the Ramotswa areas. Yeah.
Beautiful. Great. And next time we find ourselves in Amsterdam, we'll come
Yes.
to your Lekgotla club.
Absolutely. You are most welcome. We are building one soon, so you are most welcome to come to the Netherlands. Absolutely.